onto the US election and the campaigning, which is taking a lot of twists and turns. Joining us directly from Washington, D.C. is Professor Michael Cohen, who is a specialist on modern political campaigns, and he's also the founder of an app which is called Congress in Your Pocket. And I thank you very much. I thank you, Professor, for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
There's a lot going on. And with the news this morning, we woke up this morning to hear that the President and the First Lady have tested positive for COVID-19. How is that going to affect the campaigning?
Well, as it turns out, the President and his wife and a few other folks from his campaign are actually infected. So it's going to sideline them. They're not going to be able to do their rallies. They're not going to be able to travel. They're not going to be able to do the kinds of things that you would do in a normal campaign. And so this campaign for them is going to move fully online. And depending upon the president's condition, he may or may not be able to engage at all.
From a governance point of view and the management of COVID-19, who is actually supporting him with that while he's in quarantine?
Yeah, well, they have a full medical staff on call for him. There's a doctor who's directly assigned to the president at all times. And so he will get the best care that we have to offer in the country. But the question is really more than anything else is how's this going to go? I mean, we don't know, frankly, what his symptoms are. We haven't seen him. We've been told that they're mild symptoms, but we've also seen cases in this country and around the world where if someone has mild symptoms, they evolve into more serious symptoms. And so we really don't have a sense of what's going on right now until we, frankly, see more.
Do you expect him to be making announcements and connections and perhaps debates virtually online?
That's a really good question. It really depends upon the state about how he's feeling. For example, today he was supposed to be on a telephone call with folks talking about, ironically, COVID issues. And instead, the vice president is sitting in on it. So we really have to wait and see as to whether or not his condition improves enough that he's going to actually be able to debate. My sense of it is that the debates that's coming up in about 2 weeks are probably in jeopardy. And I can't imagine that they would do a town hall kind of debate with a room full of people who are asking him questions and engaging with him. So I would imagine that at the very least will be canceled, if not doing something Skype like you and I are today.
I'd like to refer to your app, of which you are the founder. How is it doing?
Well, I mean, the campaigns are actually really good for the app. Thanks for asking. And right now, all the primaries are completed in the United States. And so we're moving on to the general election. We have roughly about a month left. And so people tend to buy the app in the run up to the election. And then essentially right after the election, and they want to know why it's not all updated yet. And so we're pretty aggressively making sure that that data will be available for people as soon as the election is complete.
It's getting exciting now. I believe that Senator Kamala Harris is campaigning in Las Vegas today. What are the expectations of that specific campaign?
Well, the Biden campaign right now is in a really terrific position. The issues had sort of gone away from coronavirus for a little while. It went to judges. We have a Supreme Court vacancy that needs to be filled. And we also have, a number of other issues. There's violence in the streets. There's also, issues with race. And it came back to coronavirus, which is actually the issue on which the campaign for Biden and Harris actually rest the best. And so, seeing that happen is great news for their campaign, particularly since both candidates are not sick, but also because they're now talking within a frame from where they really want to be right now, which is talking about the poor response to the virus and really a recovery afterwards.
The death of Supreme Court Judge Ruth Ginsburg and the appointment of Amy Coney Barrett has caused quite a stir. How is this affecting the campaign?
Well, until today, it was one of the top issues of the campaign. And until today, we didn't know that one of the senators is actually sick, Senator Mike Lee of Utah, and including two others who decided that they were going to vote no. If they actually find one more vote, the Republicans do not have the votes then to approve this justice. So right now, everyone's refreshing their Twitter feeds to see if there's anyone else who's sick in the Senate, because right now, if there's one more Republican who's sick, they may not have the votes to actually approve this justice.
The presidential debate this week, I'd like to refer to that, between President Trump and Senator Biden, has been described as the most chaotic ever. Can you tell us a bit more about it?
Well, and people have been using a lot more colorful language than that as well. And I'll refrain from that for this broadcast. But I'll say this, that it was a very bad night for the president. The president sort of reinforced all the things that people really dislike about him. And, you know, what was good about Joe Biden that night was that he stood up to him, as opposed to what happened 4 years ago, where it was very clear that Senator and Secretary Clinton had actually been very intimidated by that, you know, sort of face-off. And it was pretty clear that Biden was not. He kept his cool. He did all sort of the right things that you would do under that kind of an assault. And so moving forward, what you would look for is, you know, the second debate. But right now, that's really in flux. So we really don't know if there are going to be any other major events in this campaign that are, you know, sort of going to bring everybody together to watch. Instead, you'll have ads and you'll have tweets and you'll have sort of social media and everything else. But right now, people were so turned off by what happened in that first debate. Even without COVID, you would see there would be a decline on how many people would actually watch the second time. I'm guessing right now this may freeze the race for at least the next couple of weeks. We may not see any movement at all.
How do you think it's actually going to influence the voting?
Yeah, I mean, right now, I mean, if the election were held today, I mean, Biden would win and probably win, by a wide margin. You have to wait to see like how it progresses. Like, for example, if Trump actually does recover very quickly, we may see a second debate, and then that's an opportunity for Trump to sort of change the venue and change the discussion around the campaign. 4 years ago, I would say actually 8 years ago, when President Obama debated Mitt Romney, he had actually a very bad first debate, and so did George W. Bush. There's sort of a tradition that incumbents who are president have a bad first debate, and then they sort of rebound in the second debate. If we don't get a second debate, that really doesn't give the president an opportunity to really change what's going on in this race, and Biden should win.
And what about the swing states? They're always interesting to watch. What are your comments on the swing states?
Well, the swing states right now have been kind of swingy. So we have about a half a dozen states that have were either very close or Trump had lost in 2016. Most of them are actually trending toward Biden, and nothing that's happened in the past week will change that. And in fact, I have it on pretty good authority from other people that I work with in the industry that there are some states right now that are generally considered to be Republican that actually are teetering on moving Democrat. Like, for example, I have a good buddy of mine who works in another firm. He said to me that he's been seeing some stuff in Texas that's really raising eyebrows. So, you know, a state like Texas, if that goes, this thing's over no matter what. And we won't need like an extra month to go and figure out what's going on and who won the race. It'll be pretty apparent on election day.
From your expertise on political campaigns, would you say that this campaign is really very unique?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, this is about as unique as you can go. I mean, aside from the pandemic, aside from the economic disruptions, the racial issues, you now have a president of the United States who's quarantined. We've never had anything like this, certainly in recent memory. And the idea that they're not going to even be able to debate is even under discussion is really making this more than unique and more than interesting for folks like myself who watch this and write about it and work in it.
There seems to be a rising interest in using financial data and political predictions together with betting. What are your views on this?
Well, in our system, you don't have to release your tax documents, although that's been sort of a tradition here. There's been a lot of reporting over the last week or so about Trump's taxes and the fact that he paid only $750 US over the past couple of years before he was actually elected. And so all of that information really should be sort of a no-brainer. It should be released by all kinds of candidates. And the fact that it wasn't by Trump really has set himself up in a situation where he is now arguing against the media again, but he hasn't really denied it, that he hasn't paid that kind of information, he hasn't paid those taxes. So, in our situation where you're looking at it where, that kind of information is not mandated, moving forward, that may actually change in the United States moving forward.
Can you foresee, Professor Cohen, any more surprises?
Can I foresee more surprises? Well, sure. I mean, there's probably a dozen things that you could all come up with, but I actually think that the reality of this campaign has been more interesting than our fictional or predictions that we can come up with, to be honest. I have no idea what's going to happen next. But what I do know is that buckle up. We've got 30 days left of this thing.
We've got 30 days left, of which 14 days will require President Trump to be in quarantine. So I'm just wondering how that's going to work out.
Yeah, I think we all are. Yeah. I mean, first of all, we have to see how his illness progresses. I would imagine that if he has mild symptoms, he's going to want to get out of quarantine before 14 days. So it wouldn't surprise me if you start seeing stories that the president is going, crazy in his room and he wants to get out and he wants to go campaign, or that he finds ways to engage people through social media or through video or other ways. Because even if he respects the 14 days, there's no way you're not going to see the president of the United States for 14 days. It's particularly in this kind of a campaign where it is so close. He is absolutely going to want to be visible, and he will find ways to do it.
And he is at an age where, I have to say, he's in the vulnerable group, isn't he?
Yeah, he is. I mean, at 74 years old, and he's, clinically obese, and he has high cholesterol, and there are probably some other issues that he has that we may or may not know about. And so this is an issue, you don't want to get COVID if you fall into those kinds of categories. And so while he has mild, symptoms right now, we really don't know how it's going to progress. I mean, certainly we're all hoping and praying that he's going to be okay, as well as Melania, who's at a lower risk because she's younger and she seems to be healthier. But certainly this has put him in a situation where you just don't want to be with this virus. This is a bad virus for somebody who's in his physical condition.
From your expertise, Professor Cohen, can you share some more insights before we leave you for today?
Sure. I think the important thing to look at right now, more than anything, is what happens with the Biden campaign. What do they do that doesn't sort of upset what's going on right now? One of the things that Joe Biden has had over decades of service is the idea that he's a gaffe machine, which means he makes a lot of mistakes speaking or, intent or other things. And so it is very possible that someone like Joe Biden has a very bad day one day and says something, crazy that actually pulls this back. But so far, he has actually been straight down the middle, clear about, his concern for the Trump family, and also, reinforcing his message that people need to wear masks, social distance, wash your hands, and do all the kinds of things that our Center for Disease Control have been recommending. And beyond that, this campaign may end up being very, very quiet. Normally what happens at the end of campaigns is there's a frenzy of travel, there's a frenzy of activity, there's a lot of things going on. But, the way it is right now, it's really hard to see, particularly the Trump campaign, how they're going to handle this situation. I mean, they've basically been frozen in time. And right now, the only people who can go campaign are the Bidens in a traditional sense.
Can I finally just refer to COVID-19 and the management of COVID-19? Are we seeing improvements, especially in those areas which were affected very badly?
Well, the best information that we have so far is that about half of our states are doing better over the past couple of weeks, and about half of them are seeing upticks in cases. And you're finding that because kids have gone back to school, they've gone back to university, and so the mean age for having COVID or being diagnosed with COVID has actually gone down about 10 years. And the reason why is because students are now out and about, and they're contracting the virus by, being in the same room together. As the weather gets, frankly, colder and people stay inside, in most cases in the United States, you're going to see those cases rise as well. So these are things that have basically been predicted, but now we're starting to see. And as more and more school systems open up and more parents decide to go back to work and more things are opening, you're going to see caseloads go up because the virus hasn't changed. It's human behavior that's changing right now. And ahead of a vaccine or therapeutics or other things that we can do to combat it, the only thing we can control is human behavior. And so if that changes, it's actually going to change how many cases we're getting.
Thank you very much for your time once again, Professor Cohen. Thank you. And I look forward to speaking to you soon, again, very soon.
Thank you very much. Stay safe.
Thank you. That was Professor Michael Cohen. He's an expert on modern political campaigns and also the founder of something which we might find very interesting here, but Congress in Your Pocket. So it gives up-to-date reports and analysis of the campaign as it goes along. And we still remain with the theme of the US campaign and have a look at the financial markets over to Brazil, where Nick Glinsman is still in lockdown, and he's going to give us a quick update of what's happening in the financial markets and how the US campaign is affecting them. Good evening, Nick. Good evening, Nick. I think we don't have him online. I'm very sorry. But what we'll do is we'll have a short commercial break now. When we come back, we'll carry on. And we've also got some studio guests. And we'll be also speaking about the collapse of the English language schools here in Malta and obviously around the world. But it's affected us very harshly over here. I see you very soon.